Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on the program where we cover the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today. I have a bunch of things to cover, including a live trial starting at 10 a.m., so let's get started. Okay, that was the prosecution's opening statement. Let's break it down right now. Joining me are two very special guests. First up, Law and Crime legal analyst Elura Nanos, and also joining us, criminal defense attorney Ashley McMahon. Great to have you both here. Elura, I want to start with you. How'd the prosecutor do at this opening statement? Because it's kind of a weird case.
It is a weird case. And Jesse, I have to tell you, I think she nailed it. I cannot imagine anyone honestly doing a better job than this woman did. She took this really unusual and sort of convoluted set of facts, and she presented them in such a seamless way that the narrative was very easy to follow. And then at various times during her presentation, she would say, and here's why this is important, and here's why this matters. So it really allowed the listener to understand what it was she was presenting. And then at a couple of times, we had these very dramatic moments where you're following along, and then all of a sudden we hear, and then they found the victim's body, which was, I didn't know that that's what was coming. And then we heard, and then the defendant was found on videotape buying this potting soil and the cement. So she really delivered what I thought was an extremely effective opening.
You got to tell a story, whether the prosecution and the defense. And Ashley, I mean, the defense is saying this state, they don't have any evidence linking our client to the crime. But is that true? I mean, because based upon what we heard in the prosecution, they have some stuff. They got cell phone data, surveillance footage. What do you think?
Well, Jesse, with all murder cases, okay, we've always got it's either for love or it's for money. And recently we've seen a lot of cases where it's been passion, it's been love. This is a case where it's cold, hard cash is the motivation. And unfortunately, nowadays, it's really hard to get away with those kind of crimes because we do everything electronically. And the prosecution in her opening statement is relying on the evidence that they've got, which in this case is pretty damning. It's going to be text messages. It's going to be the fact that she added the victim as a user on one of her bank accounts. I mean, you're not going to be able to get around, as a defense attorney, these electronic records that are going to connect with the jury, because everybody nowadays uses, the internet and uses their phone and everything for all of their banking. I mean, I can't remember the last time I sat down and wrote a paper check or, was walking around with a bunch of cash in a book bag and texting my friend about it. So I think the prosecution did a really good job here in just going through line by line. Hey, here's all the evidence that we have, and you're going to see that it's backed up by electronic records, which I think is going to be really rough for the defense.
Well, it's good to know that you don't walk around with a suitcase full of money. That would have been questionable, and I would have been a little worried about that. But let's move on. What more does the prosecution have? This is more of the opening statement from yesterday. Elura, one of the reasons we talked about this odd situation, this odd case, is because of the relationship between the defendant and the victim. What do you make of that relationship?
Well, I mean, it certainly is odd, right? Because we have the victim who is in the middle of this all kinds of drama with her ex-husband and court dates and who knows what's going to happen with her child support and all that stuff. And then she's giving huge sums of money to this friend to basically help her hide. And it sounds like between that drama with her ex-husband and whatever drama is going on with her new girlfriend and, communications between the defendant and this woman, Cassandra, there just seems like there's a lot of drama going on. And, the sense that I'm getting from the story the prosecutor is telling is like, hey, there was just a lot going on among these women. There was any number of kind of motivations for people to get upset with one another and have there be stress between each other. There's this issue of the truck at her house and who's moving in, and then they decided to not move in. But then when you factor in that the defendant is also in the middle of a racketeering case and was convicted for other crimes having nothing to do with this, then it really kind of adds color to this about what kind of shady business was going on in this community of women.
So the motive sounds right, except Ashley, would somebody murder somebody else for $34,000? Let me ask you, $34,000?
I hate to say it, Jesse, but yes, I have seen murders or people accused of murder for less. I mean, just with the Draca case, that was over a handicapped parking spot. That wasn't even over money. So it's like at this point, I'm not shocked or surprised by anything that people are accused of now. And just like you were talking about earlier, there's a lot going on in this case, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we haven't even really gotten into, and that we're going to get into once, they're done with openings, and we'll see when the prosecution starts presenting evidence. Some of this story is going to unfold, and I think it's going to be a lot more complicated than we initially assumed. So I don't think it's just $34,000. I think it's a little bit more than that when you tie that in with some passion issues and maybe some other motivations that we're not even privy to lately.
Yeah, you never know what to expect. We also covered a case of a guy who was accused of murdering his father and chopping up the body, and so you never see that. Elura, your chance. What is your thoughts on the motivation here?
What I was going to say is I don't see it as it just being the motivation to have this $34,000. Let's keep in mind, this is about the stress that this defendant was under. She spent the money she was supposed to be holding for her friend. And now the friend is coming back and saying, you got to give me my money back, because otherwise I could go to jail for it. So in my mind, it's not so much about just money, but it's about the pressure and the stress and the fallout that's going to happen when she has to come clean and say, I don't have your money after all.
Right. And so if she is ultimately convicted of this, and it is true she did this, murder was definitely the better option for her. Okay, so that's some of the defense's opening statement from yesterday, a response to what we just heard from the prosecution. Elura, I'll start with you. How'd he do?
I do think that he did well in terms of his ability to present his narrative in a way that was compelling and interesting and easy to digest. So on that front, I think he did well. But let me say this, the narrative that he chose in my book, I don't know that I think that really is his best choice. Because what I'm hearing him say is he's to some degree attacking the victim. He's saying here the victim kind of was a bit of a screwball and had all kinds of drama going on in her life, and you're going to hear this, and to me, all that really does, at least at this point, is play into exactly what the prosecutor's narrative was. So I'm not seeing how it really helps the defense. But I will say that's one thing that he did, one choice that he made that I think was strategic and very smart, was that he knows he can't get away from the fact that his client lied and evaded during the investigation. So he came right out and said it. He said, look, you're going to see that she sometimes didn't give the whole truth. And I think it's important for him to have said that. I think it's going to build trust with the jury, that he's being straight with them. So I think that he's doing a good job with what he has. But I don't know that it's making a huge difference in terms of getting the jury sort of on his side.
Right. And look, Elura, you make a great point. Sometimes these are just the facts that you're handed and you have to deal with them. Ashley, my question to you is, in these kinds of cases, I know the defense doesn't have to put on a case. They don't have to point the finger at anybody else. They just have to show that the state hasn't met their burden. But in these kinds of cases, where we don't have a ton of details and the evidence seems to be pretty strong so far based upon the prosecution's case, should they at least point the finger at somebody else and give the jurors an idea of another suspect, if they can?
I agree with you, Jesse. So, the way the law is stated is that it's the burden's on the prosecution and the defense doesn't have to put up any evidence. However, just as you were stating, in order to get a jury to come back with an acquittal on these types of cases, I think it just doesn't behoove the defense to put up nothing. They have to come forward with their own theme, their own theory of what happened, so that jurors, when they go back into that deliberation room, have something to hang their hat on and something that they can reliably say, okay, it's reasonable that this could be the other theory or another person that did this, or another way that this happened other than what the prosecution has presented us. Because I think it's just going to be, a kind of open and shut with all of these electronic records and with everything that's going on in the defendant and the victim's relationship in this case, if they just remain silent on it.
It's an interesting case, and it's already day 2. We didn't see that much yesterday besides the openings and one witness. We're waiting for the live feed in about a half hour, and as you can tell, there's a lot to already analyze, and it's just been day 1. So when we come back, we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to focus on different trials. We talked about the top of the hour, the verdicts that we got in Sean Foley and Draca. We'll be right back right after this.